You're listening to Seasoned with Salt. My name is Dominique Beaumonte, your host, and I'm pleased to have you join me today. This is episode 46, and we're going to be talking about justice for Breonna Taylor. Let me start by saying that as a Black man, as a Black person, I feel like it is my obligation to defend, to support, to cover, to love Black women. And that is the premise for which I decided that this podcast episode was necessary. You may be following the case of Breonna Taylor, but I want to assume that not everybody who is listening to this podcast is abreast of exactly what is going on. I want to first say that irregardless of the news that a settlement has been reached between the City of Louisville and the family of Breonna Taylor, we still should be saying her name. I want to read for you a quote from Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, who says the following: "As significant as today is, it is only the beginning of getting full justice for Breonna. It's time to move forward with the criminal charges because she deserves that and much more. Her beautiful spirit and personality is working through all of us on the ground. So please continue to say her name. Please continue to say her name." What we have learned in the last few days is that a settlement between the City of Louisville and Breonna Taylor was reached. That settlement we believe to be in or around $12 million. According to the news records, that $12 million will be paid by the city in the amount of $500,000, and then there's insurance that'll pay $5 million per occurrence every year. Another $2 million will come from self-insured retention fund, and then $4.5 million will come from the Louisville Metro General Fund. In addition to what is being called a substantial cash payout, the settlement includes police reform, such as, but not limited to, a requirement that commanders approve all search warrants before they go to a judge. We're going to talk about that. That housing credits for officers who agree to live in the city for which they work should be provided. And then pursuing the authority for drug and alcohol testing of officers involved in any shooting. I want to first share how angry I feel when it comes to discussing how to make right the wrongful death of Breonna Taylor. I think it's also important for us to know that Breonna Taylor's family does not believe that a cash payout is the same as justice. You've seen people say that, and I think it's important to debunk that ideology because that's not the case. I also think it's important for us to have an intense conversation about what it actually means to honor the life and the Black body of Breonna Taylor beyond whatever it is that the family decides to do, which is completely their business. It's also important for us to recognize that any and all of us, any and all Black women, anybody is subject to this level of scrutiny and violence and murder, no matter where you live. So we have no room or option to be lackadaisical or uh, feeling like the work is complete in this particular case. I'm relieved that the family of Breonna Taylor feels as though that 12 million or how much ever it is adequate compensation for her death. But I'm not happy that we have to endure this continuous precedent where systems of power get to use the resources that they have as damage control rather than undoing this system of racism that we have seen built over time. I think that with regard to the quote unquote massive reform of the police department, it's baffling to me that people who perpetuate and substantiate the violence against the Black people in general, and particularly Black women, get to then be the same people that turn around and say that they are key to the way that systems are reformed. That's like, in my book, asking a drug addict to become their own drug counselor, to be their own counselor, their own means for healing. Like, I it to me, it baffles me. And what really we should be thinking about, what really we should be talking about, is how we stop this cycle of power, how we stop these systems that tend to protect themselves, and how we make a statement that no matter how much money the payout, we really would rather have you respect and honor Black lives. I think that that's most important. $12 million will run out. $12 million will come and go for this family. What they will never be able to retrieve is the life of Breonna Taylor. They will never be able to get that back. There is no price tag on the life of Black women. There is no price tag on the life of Black people in general. And so we must revisit this. We must not take 12 million as the answer to our challenge universally. I also think that in all of the discussions that we have been having, we have not thoroughly and adequately discussed the impact of the circuit judge, Mary Shaw. Mary Shaw is the judge who signed the no-knock warrant that allowed these officers to enter into the house, the home of Breonna Taylor, and shoot her 8 times. To add insult to injury, Mary Shaw, who needs to be brought to justice, signed 5 no-knock warrants in 12 minutes. Now, what does that say to you? That ought to say to you that this woman with power and influence as a circuit court judge decided that she would put the lives of the people who live in these homes at the scrutiny of a couple officers. She made that decision in 12 minutes. A decision made in less than 12 minutes because she didn't even read any of this, right? If you take the 5 warrants and you divide it by the 12 minutes, it's safe to say she took 2 minutes to she used her privilege and her power, and in her negligence, she signed a no-knock warrant for somebody that wasn't even involved all she had to do was do the adequate amount of research. So I want to say that Mary Shaw, you are not off the hook. As we are saying Breonna Taylor's name, we need to be talking about Mary Shaw. We need to be talking about the role and the misuse of power and her role in place. She also needs to be fired. She also needs to be investigated if she has not already. The second thing is we allow these systems We allow these systems to have us having discussions about the criminal history of victims, right? Like, oh, what did Breonna Taylor do wrong? Release her record. Now, we dumbfoundedly are so disconnected sometimes from the truth that we allow these systems to have to enter just small non-contextual information into these discussions, and then we build a theory on these non-contextual pieces of information, and we use them to essentially kick our own selves in the knee. Case in point, we were comfortable with being uninformed about who Breonna Taylor's boyfriend is. And we let news blurbs about Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend that she's no longer with, inform this entire conversation about her current boyfriend who took out his gun to defend her. Now, the second thing that we allow the media to make us believe to be true is that this Black man protecting his woman after his home had been broken into via a no-knock warrant for no reason, we say, oh, he shot an officer. What information, what credible information do we have to prove that this Black man shot anybody? We don't even have that information. Listen, the USA Today did a fact check on this information, and this is what they wrote. Kenneth Walker, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, does not dispute firing one round inside of the of his apartment at what he said he thought to be intruders. Intruders, no-knock, plainclothes police officers entering into your home. That's almost the same thing in the middle of the night. There is no evidence, however, that Mattingly, the officer, was shot by anyone other than Walker. And attorneys for Walker and Taylor's family haven't disputed the claim. We rate the claim that the police officer involved in the death of Breonna was injured by friendly fire false because it's not supported by any research. It's not substantiated by any research. So this idea, there's not even this clear, we don't even have a clear picture of who actually shot this officer, right? So we have all these myths out, right? We're confused about who Breonna Taylor's boyfriend is, and so we're blaming some boyfriend that's not the boyfriend. We're using the boyfriend's criminal past to make assumptions about who Breonna Taylor was, right? So we have all of these false narratives that we allowed to create. But at the same time, the officer that shot 10 rounds into Taylor's apartment, Brett Hankerson, is an individual who several women, do you hear me? Several women have claimed that he has participated in some level of sexual assault against them. So here is a man who, according to several women, lacks respect for women in general. And we decide to protect this man, but not the men, whether it be Breonna Taylor's current boyfriend or her ex-boyfriend, from the role that they are allegedly playing in all of this. To me, like, it's almost like we shoot ourselves in the foot. I also think that as we are pursuing justice and as we continue to say the name of Breonna Taylor, we have to remember again that this could have been any of us. Because when you take into consideration how systemically these systems feel about Black life, how Black life, the idea of our lives mattering, has been politicized to the point where white people can say with their own mouth that Black Lives Matter is some type of uh, situation or system that promotes fear and is a challenge to democracy. This is where our world is. And so when we continue to speak the name of Breonna Taylor, we are not just saying that we want justice in Kentucky. We are saying that we want justice everywhere and that we want to talk about what it means to wear a bias, whether that bias attached to your privilege and your power, to wear that bias into situations where you bring harm to Black life. And if we refuse to say the name of Breonna Taylor continuously until justice is given to her family, then what we are saying is essentially we are okay with this continuing to happen to Black women, with this continuing to happen to Black men. We're saying that that's okay. And this is not a call to action to just Black people. This is a call to action to everybody, because we cannot allow for this to continue to happen. And we cannot sit comfortably in this idea that there will be police reform when the people who are responsible, quote unquote, for this reform are the same people that perpetuated violence against Black bodies. How are you going to save yourself? How are you going to fix a problem that you created? We got to do better. We got to do better. We got to care about who's on these juries. We got to care about the resources needed for this family to pursue justice. We can't be caught off guard by believing that they're just going to get a $12 million check in the mail either. And then we have to be just as concerned about the life of Breonna Taylor as we are concerned about the lives of Black women every day who are subjected to violence in this very way, right? We got to do that. As a Christian, it would be a complete disregard to the teachings of Jesus Christ to ignore the realities of what is happening in our world and to brush it off as a political scheme or to brush it off as somebody else's business. The first thing we have to do as believers is we have to pray. We have to pray for real reform that doesn't just do something for future police departments and future communities, but that addresses the ill-informed bias, the inclination towards violence toward Black bodies. That has to be addressed amongst the people who are currently in these departments. And then we cannot forget about the Mary Shaws. We need to ask God to help those that have these places of privilege, these major responsibilities, to take serious their jobs. And when we get done praying, we have to call these people to the ring. We have to challenge our local officials. We have to challenge our local systems of government to take a look at what happened in Kentucky and what happened in all the states where Black bodies have been illegitimized. And we have to say that reform should not begin when something happens. It should start now, right? And the work that we do, whether it be in prayer and definitely through action, because the Bible tells us that faith without works is dead. The work that we do doesn't just protect the legacy of Breonna Taylor, but it protects our own legacy, the legacy that we expect for our young daughters and sons to continue. I think that's our responsibility. And the thing that we must do is stay informed. We must go beyond the subject line. We must go beyond the snippet. We must ask the right questions. We must do the fact checking. We must listen thoroughly to the interviews and to the comments. We must not be a people that get all of our news from social media. We've got to do the work to stay informed, because we continuously allow individuals on every level of government to seize power without properly being vetted, right? Without properly asking the appropriate questions about their biases, where they come from, what they believe in. And I wouldn't, I mean, I would never even consider voting for Donald Trump. But if I were to have considered voting for Donald Trump, and something, and the thing that would have stopped me from doing that is when he said that he would consider having Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General of Kentucky, be a person considered for the highest court in our land, the Supreme Court. This is the man whose disregard for this Black woman's life has even gotten us to this conversation. This is the man who, while we were wrestling and calling the name of Breonna Taylor, he was off getting married and living his life, right? Trying to become a political powerhouse and be seen by the master. But we don't even have to go there. And so the question is, who voted for him? How did he get there? And so we must take elections on all levels, we must take them all serious. We must consider the impact of these elections. We got to ask questions about who these people are, who are their history, where are they from, what do they believe? And then we have to ask them the hard questions if we don't know the answers, because some folks have been living secretly and haven't been asked these questions, right? And because we haven't been asked the questions, we don't really know what we're going to get. Ask the person that's running for city council, the school board, if Black Lives Matter. Because that's important, because these are the people that are making decisions that impact our community. And so I said all that to say I'm angry, right? And the Bible says that we can be angry, but sin not. I'm not going to sin. But it's a righteous indignation, right? It's a call to action. It's a realization that I can do more. And a part of this discussion is doing more, right? Really being committed to informing people about what is really going on and taking seriously the influence that I have. And I want to encourage you all to do the same.